Hi, I'm Dr. Molly Gebry, and welcome to part 2 in this series on playing faster. So let's get to it. So the first of these things is a series of rhythms to practice scales in. So I know these as the Gingold rhythms. Joseph Gingold was a famous violin teacher, and these were his rhythms for practicing scales. So you can see here that there is a pattern for each one. So this first one is quarter followed by 2/8 and then a sextuplet, and then it repeats itself. And so instead of practicing scales like this, although it's great to practice scales in these rhythms, use this rhythm for your passage. So the first note of the passage would be a quarter note, and then 2/16 notes, and then a sextuplet, etc. I'm going to put these various rhythms up in this video so you can see them, but if you would like them sort of printed out to have to put on your stand, they are the last 2 pages of a PDF that's available on my website called The Amazing List of Practicing Techniques. I've put a link to this PDF in the notes below, so feel free, go download that, and all of these rhythms are in there for you to look at and to practice with. I do these both separate bows and also with the articulations that are marked in the passage, just like when we were talking about the normal rhythms. Okay, this next method is a method of clicking things up with the metronome that works unbelievably well. So I made this up. I call it interleaved clicking up because I don't have a better name for it. But I made it up several years ago when I was working on something that had to be fast that for the life of me I could not play. I had practiced it every way I could think of, everything I'd ever been taught about playing things faster, and I just couldn't play it. And it was a piece I was supposed to be premiering, and I was like, what am I going to do? I can't play this thing. And so out of frustration, I made up this interleaved clicking up that I'm about to explain to you, and it was like magic. Suddenly I could play it. And so now I use this for everything. It works remarkably well. My students all say the same thing. They're like, oh my gosh, I do this once, and it's like amazing how well I can play it and how well it sticks with me. The reason this works so well is because of this research on interleaved practice, on random practicing that I discussed in one of my previous videos. So if you haven't seen that, I've linked to it below. But basically, when you switch back and forth between different things rather than focusing on one thing for a long time, then move on to the next thing, when you switch back and forth between different things, it helps your brain to learn it, because essentially you give your brain a chance to forget, right? You work on something for a little while, go work on other stuff, and then you come back to this thing and it's testing your brain. Okay, how well do you remember what you worked on in this passage? And that helps it stick in your brain. It helps it get in there more securely and be put into long-term storage, which is what we want when we're working on things. And so this method of clicking up is constantly going back and forth between different things and takes advantage of this aspect of the brain that it likes learning things when they're interleaved rather than all at once in a chunk. All right, so make sure you're paying attention. This is not difficult to do, but it is difficult to explain and understand. So after this video is over, I'm going to make another video with myself actually doing this with a passage. I'll get my viola. You can play along if you want, to show you how it's actually done with music. But I'm just going to explain it right now, and hopefully it will make sense. All right, here we go. So you can use this method of practicing in a variety of ways. I'm going to talk about it today doing it by the beat, going one beat at a time, but you can also do it by the measure or whatever you want. But today I'm going to talk about it as going by the beat. Okay, so the first step is to do just the first beat and click that up by 5s. So start with your start tempo. In this example, I'm going to use 60 as my start tempo. So just the first beat only at 60, then just the first beat at 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, etc., until you get to your goal tempo. So again, just the first beat, click it up by 5. So each of these colored squares represents one beat. Okay, once you've done that, then you are going to go back to your start tempo, and you are going to play beats 1 and 2 at 60. So the orange square, that's beat 2. So beats 1 and 2 at 60. Then you are going to play beat 2 only at 65. Then you are going to play beats 1 and 2 at 70. Then just beat 2 at 75. Then both beats at 80. Then just beat 2 at 85, etc., going on like this until you get to your goal tempo. So the new beat, the orange beat in this case, is every 5. The old beat, the red beat, the first beat, is happening every 10. So every 10, so 60, 70, 80, you do both beats together. On the 5s, you do just the new beat. All right, so once you've gotten to your goal tempo doing this, then you go back to your start tempo, so 60, and now you're going to play the first 3 beats at 60. Then you're going to do just the new beat, the yellow beat, at 65. Then you will do the second and third beats at 70. Then just the new beat at 75, and then all 3 beats at 80. Hopefully you can predict what comes next. So next would be just the new beat, the yellow beat, at 85. Then the second and third beats at 90. Then just the new beat at 95. And then all 3 at 100. And then you would continue doing this pattern until, again, you get to your goal tempo. Okay, hopefully I haven't lost you so far. Like I said, I will post another video with myself actually doing this that you can play along to so you can see how I'm doing it. Okay, so then you go back to your start tempo, so back to 60, and this time you're going to play the first 4 beats at 60. Then just the new beat at 65, then yellow and green at 70, then green 75, then orange, yellow, green 80, then green 85, then all 4 beats at 90. Hopefully you can predict what's next. So just the new beat at 95, yellow, green at 100, green at 105, orange, yellow, green at 110, green at 115, and then all 4 beats at 120. If that's your goal tempo, great. If not, keep doing this pattern until you get to your goal tempo. All right, I put one more step in just to make sure you understand how this works. So go back to your start tempo. We're going to add another beat now. So now we have 5 beats worth. So we're playing these 5 beats at our start tempo, which is 60. Then again, your new beat only at 65. Then green and blue at 70, just blue at 75, yellow, green, blue at 80, just blue at 85, orange, yellow, green, blue at 90, just the new beat 95, then the whole thing at 100, then just the new beat at 105, then green, blue at 110. You get the idea. All right, so I've stopped it here at 120 because I ran out of space. So if your goal tempo was, say, 140, you would keep going. So the next thing you would do would be just the blue at 125, then orange, yellow, green, blue at 130, then just the blue at 135, and then all 5 beats at 140. If, however, your goal tempo is 120, what I do is one of 2 things. If I'm close to sort of completing the pattern, I will just keep going until I've completed the pattern. And at that point, I'm well above my goal tempo, but like we talked about before, that's what you want, right? But if I'm pretty far away from my goal tempo, or if completing the pattern gets me like way too fast, then when I get to my goal tempo, so in this case, say 120, I will break the pattern and do, in this case, all 5 beats at 120 rather than just beats 3, 4, and 5. So it sort of depends on what I'm doing. Okay, hopefully I didn't lose you. I know that it's complicated to sort of wrap your mind around this, but the idea, the overarching idea, is that the new beat, whatever it is getting played every 5. So the new beat is being focused on every time, and then it's being put into context with the other beats. The other thing it's doing is as the beats get old, so in the case of this example, the red beat, right, became older and older, you're doing that less often, and so you're forcing your brain to do it, say at 60 and then not again till 90, and testing, okay, can I make this big of a gap in between the tempos that I'm playing this? So if you're confused, I would say watch my explanation again, but also watch the other video that I'm going to post. I'll link again below, and play along while we're actually doing it. I think it will help it make more sense to you. This may seem like, oh my gosh, that's so complicated. Like, I'm not going to do that. That takes way too much time. This works so unbelievably well that I actually don't do much beyond this anymore. So rhythms, bowings, all the stuff we've already talked about, I don't actually do that stuff anymore because this interleaved clicking up works so well that I don't feel that I have to. The other thing I find with interleaved clicking up is that I can do it and it sticks with me unbelievably well. So also, like I said, you can do it by the beat, but you can also do it by the measure. So in the example, every colored square was a beat, but you could make every colored square a measure. So click up the first measure by fives, then add a measure instead of adding a beat. I also use this going backwards. So instead of starting with the first beat, I'll start with the last beat and then add beats going backward, working backwards that way. So if the end of the passage is the hardest part, I'll do this thing clicking up backwards. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter going forwards or going backwards. I also have a second way of using this idea of interleaved practicing to work on clicking things up. So this second way sort of helps address the issue that I always felt as a student, which was, okay, I could click it up, start at 60, click up by fives, get to 120, and then I could play it at 120 and I felt great. But then, if I tried to just play it at 120 in my lesson, it would be a disaster. So how do you work on just playing it at tempo? And this second way of using the interleaved clicking up is one thing I do to help address that, being able to just play it at tempo. So with this method, I use it once I've done the interleaved clicking up with the colored squares that I just talked about. So this is, I can play the thing at tempo, I've learned it, I feel comfortable. Now I'm trying to work on just being able to play it at tempo without doing all the clicking up first. So for this method, you need to pick at least 3 different passages. So they could be 3 different pieces. They could be 3 different sections of the same big passage. They could be different passages within a movement. It doesn't matter. So 3 different passages, no more than 5, I would say. So between 3 and 5 different passages. If you do more than 5, it takes too long. If you do less than 3, you don't really get the benefit of it. So for my example, we're going to say 3 passages. So what you want to do first is to click up passage A by fives. So 60, 65, 70, 75, etc. till you get to your goal tempo. Then go to your second passage, passage B, and click that up by fives. Then go to your third passage and click that up by fives. So you've clicked each passage up by fives. Now you're going to go back to the first passage, back to your start tempo, and you're going to click up the passage now by tens. So 60, 70, 80, blah, blah, blah. Then you will click up passage B by tens, and then passage C by tens. Once you've done this, go back to your start tempo again, click up passage A now by 20s, so 60, 80, 100, etc. Then do passage B by 20s and passage C by 20s. All right, next you're going to go back and you're going to click up passage A by 30s, so 60, 90, 120, passage B by 30s, passage C by 30s. If, for instance, you are going from 60 to 120, clicking by 30s is your start tempo, so 60, the middle tempo, 90, and then the goal tempo, 120. But if that's not the case, like, so say you're going from from 60 to 140, clicking up by 30s would not be the start tempo, the middle tempo, and the goal tempo. So the next step is to do passage A at your start tempo, your middle tempo, and your goal tempo. Then passage B, same way, then passage C, same way. Next, you're going to do passage A at the start tempo only, and then the goal tempo, so nothing in between. So for instance, 60, 120. Passage B, same way, start tempo, goal tempo. Passage C, start tempo, goal tempo. And then finally, passage A at your goal tempo, passage B at your goal tempo, passage C is at your goal tempo. Again, the reason I think this works so well is, so you've clicked up passage A by whatever you're clicking up by now. And then you go do passage B and C. When you come back to A, you've forgotten it a little bit, right? And now you're going to up the level of difficulty. So you were just doing it by tens. You haven't practiced it in a little bit because you've been practicing passages B and C. And then you come back to passage A, and now you have to click it up by 20s, which is harder than what you were doing before. And you forgot about it a little bit because you were doing passages B and C. What I used to do is I would pick just one passage and click it up by 5s, then 10s, then 20s, 30s, etc. And that worked pretty well, but it didn't work as well as this method does because I was doing it all in one block and I wasn't giving my brain a chance to forget about that passage and then come back and test it in a more difficult situation a little bit later. So I use this method, so each passage sort of in succession. Again, once I've done the interleaved clicking up with the colored squares, I feel like I can play it comfortably at tempo. Now I want to be able to just do it at tempo anytime I want. All right, one other method I use to help me be able to play things just at tempo, not clicking it up at all because you don't get to click it up in a performance, right, is something called chunking. So if you watched my memorization video, again, link to below, we talked about chunking, which is taking separate pieces of information and putting it together in a packet of information so the individual pieces are related to a larger whole. And our brains really like it when we chunk information because it's less to remember. So if you think about a phone number with an area code, wherever you live, you don't really have to think about the 3 numbers in the area code as separate numbers. You know it as one thing. So I'm from Connecticut. My cell phone starts with area code 860. I don't have to remember 8, 6, gosh, what comes next? Is it 1? Is it 3? Oh, it's 0. No, I just remember those 3 numbers as one unit because I've chunked them. So using this to play fast is really, really helpful. So the way I use this is, and again, I do this chunking step after I've done all the other steps we've already talked about. So first I'll play a beat plus a note as fast as I can cleanly. So if it's 16th notes, I'll play da-ka-da-ka-da as fast as I can cleanly. And I'll go through the passage that way, a beat plus a note as fast as I can cleanly. Then I will do 2 beats plus a note as fast as I can cleanly. So da-ka-da-ka-da-ka-da-ka-da as fast as I can cleanly. You want to make sure that you do beats 1 and 2 first. Then it's tempting to do beats 3 and 4 next, but you want to do beats 2 and 3, right? So you do all the possible combinations. After you've done that, then you do 3 beats plus a note as fast as you can cleanly, etc., until you have basically the whole passage. What this does is it helps each beat feel like a chunk of information. It forces you to play a bunch of notes fast and not think about them individually anymore, but think about them as one unit, which makes it easier to play faster. There's another method of chunking that actually combines chunking and clicking up that I want to share with you guys. So I learned this method from Dr. Cora Cooper, who teaches at Kansas State University. I learned this in her ASTA presentation at the ASTA 2020 conference, the last sort of in-person thing a lot of us are going to be able to attend for a while. Anyway, so let me explain how this works for you. Okay, so I have put the original here. This is from the Walton Concerto Violist. You may recognize it. And I've labeled each beat with a number, and it's colored, so you can follow what's happening. Okay, so like my method of clicking up, first you're going to do 1 beat plus a note, but you're going to start at a slow tempo, at your start tempo for clicking things up. And you're going to follow it by a rest. So you'll play ducka-ducka-ducka-da, rest, ducka-ducka-da, rest. And you will click it up like this, 1 beat plus a note, followed by a rest, until you reach your goal tempo. Next step, now you're going to do 2 beats plus a note, followed by a rest. Again, starting at your slow start tempo, and clicking up until you reach your goal tempo. You can see that I have made sure to sort of overlap things. So first I do beats 1 and 2, then I do beats 2 and 3, then 3 and 4, etc. You can put any amount of rest in. So I've only put a little bit of rest in, but you could put 2 beats rest in, right? So you could do ducka 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 da, rest, rest, da 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 da. It doesn't matter as long as the amount of rest is consistent all the way up from your start tempo to your goal tempo. Next, you would do 3 beats plus a note followed by rests. Again, starting at a slow tempo, clicking up to your goal tempo. So what this does is, like the chunking thing we've already talked about, it allows you to think about groups of notes as bigger units. What the rests do is they allow you a moment to relax your brain, clear your mind, relax your hand, so that you're not building tension into the fast passage. That's also the point of doing the chunking with the clicking up, that you are making sure that both your body and your brain remain relaxed while you are doing this. All right, so those are my suggestions on clicking things up, chunking things, rhythms, bowings, how to make things faster. So again, like I said at the beginning, you got to start with slow practice, make it nice and clean, but then you have to do a variety of different things to get it up to tempo so it's just as clean and you can play it with as much ease, fast, as when it's slow. So again, if the interleaved clicking up with the little colored squares was confusing, feel free to watch my next video. I've printed the music in there in treble, bass, and alto clefs so that you can play along with me. I've picked something very, very easy, perpetual motion from Suzuki Book 1, so that everybody can play it, just to recognize and to illustrate how this method of clicking up works. So I hope you'll join me over there. Otherwise, good luck and have fun making things faster.